Good evening, everyone. It is now 6:31. I call this meeting of Lancaster City Council for June 25th, 2024 to order. A few reminders here at the top of the meeting. This is an excellent opportunity now to silence your phones or devices if you haven't done so already. The participants in this meeting are being recorded. This evening, there will be several opportunities for public comment. If you wish to make comment, please do so at the podium that you see there and speak into the microphone so that you can be heard both in this room and on our live stream. Please begin comments with your name and block of residence for the meeting record. Comments should be addressed toward council and are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. To keep time, I'll have this light here. You'll see it turn green when your time begins. When there's 1 minute remaining, it will turn yellow, and it will turn red when 3 minutes has been exhausted. Please do respect that time. Everyone will get the same amount of minutes. Thank you. And now, for those who are willing and able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Harris, would you please call the roll of members?
Yes, Madam President. Mr. Med.
Here.
Mr. Royo.
Here.
Mr. Cleese.
Here.
Ms. Craig.
Here.
Ms. Diaz. Mr. Hirsch.
Here.
And President Baker.
Here. Councilor Diaz is excused this evening. The next item is the approval of the minutes of the June 11th, 2024 meeting of council.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second on the meeting minutes. Any council comments on them? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Med.
Aye.
Mr. Royo.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
And President Baker.
Aye. Thank you. All right. Our first item up tonight is proclamations, awards, honors, and resolutions of recognition. We do have one of those this evening. It's resolution number 54, 2024. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster calling for a ceasefire in the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict in Gaza.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. This was brought to council by Councilor Ahmed. Councilor Ahmed.
Thank you, Council President. I would first like to thank all of those involved in the input, feedback, organizing, and support this resolution has gotten. I'd also like to thank those who disagree. I would like to who kindly shared their perspective and concerns. It is through difficult conversations that we may learn from each other. I understand some on both sides of this issue may take issue with the language that the resolution has, but as leaders, it is important that we bring everybody's voices to the table, build bridges, and form consensus. Lancaster prides itself on its interfaith coexistence, which makes us better as a community. And that is why it was important that we had input from Palestinian, Jewish, Muslim, Lancastrians, as well as community organizers and community leaders. I would like to assure those in the audience that this resolution's intent is not to harm or hurt anyone. This resolution is a good faith effort to call for lasting peace, an immediate multilateral ceasefire, and the release of all hostages. I certainly understand the nuance and complexities of this conflict, and am not naive that this resolution will solve the challenging crisis. I hope that we can see this as a good faith effort to stand as leaders and call for peace and bear witness to what's happening in front of us. I firmly believe that local government is the most important form of government, and local leaders must not shy away from making challenging decisions, but step up and be stewards of our community's call to action. This is a Lancaster issue. To my fellow councilors, please pass this resolution. This is timely and we must act now. The recent IPC report states that 96% of Gaza is facing immediate famine, and tens and thousands of innocent civilians and refugees may die by mid-July. And the only way to stop this is through a cessation of hostilities and an increase in humanitarian aid. As the leader in welcoming across the nation, this city must stand in solidarity with refugees. We must pass this resolution. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you very much, Councilor Ahmed. There will be opportunity for public comment. I know many of you have asked, but before that, we will take any other comments from members of council. All right. Then we will open it up for public comment. A few notes as we get started. I know that there may be a large number of people who are here to comment on this item. I would ask that for the sake of everyone's time that we do respect the 3-minute limit. And if you wish to make comment, you can begin lining up at the podium now. Please begin with your name and your block of residence for our meeting record. Thank you. Sir, you're first. Go right ahead. Thank you. As you start, please just push the button on the microphone so you see the green light. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Howard Kellen. I represent Congregation Shari Shemoyim, 75 East James Street, where I am Executive Vice President of the Board of Trustees. On behalf of our congregation, I ask City Council to not adopt this proposed resolution. Those asking City Council to adopt the resolution are our brothers and sisters in peace. They see suffering and want to stop it. And certainly we join them in that goal. And there are some components of the proposed resolution we endorse wholeheartedly. As one instance, reaffirming the city's stance against anti-Palestinian discrimination, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia. However, the proposed resolution does not acknowledge Israel's fundamental right to exist. It does not call upon Hamas to cease its mission of eradicating Israel. It does not seek to stop Hamas from using its own citizens as human shields, placing them directly in harm's way. In contrast, the United States has made clear that a ceasefire plan needs to protect Israel's future security. Because the proposed resolution does not address the need to protect Israel's security, respectfully, it is unhelpful toward ensuring peace and is inappropriate for City Council. Our Rabbi, Jack Paskoff, and our Board of Trustees and our entire congregation remain committed to helping the Lancaster community through this tragic ordeal. We wish to learn from others, to empathize with others, to pray with others for peace, and to find common ground wherever possible. I'm part of a group from our congregation who worked with Church World Services over the past year to welcome to Lancaster a family of 9 refugees from Syria. We helped to furnish their home. We gave them rides to the grocery store, to the doctor, to school meetings and other appointments, and to the Islamic Community Center on North Queen Street for prayer services. We joined the family for their birthday celebrations. In short, our temple is part of what makes Lancaster a welcoming home for refugees, including refugees from the Islamic community. Thank you. I would like to stay and hear others. Unfortunately, I have a medical emergency. I need to go directly to the ER, but I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. Lisa Cologne, 400 block of North Prince Street, Lancaster City. I'm appearing here today with rhetorical questions, concerns, and suggestions for today's resolution. Lancaster City Council's desire to call for a ceasefire in Gaza reflects an increasing trend of localities inserting themselves in worldwide and international affairs. While it is commendable that today's society is taking a stand on issues such as advocating for peace and humanitarianism for all involved, it is also clear that doing so can cause strife, alienation, and increased tension. The war in Gaza is a prime example. There is a balance between taking a stand on international issues and the potential for increasing local tensions or creating a division inadvertently. The importance of wording when government entities involve themselves in international matters cannot be stressed enough. One must ensure your call for peace abroad doesn't create division here. In light of my statements above, can you assure us as residents that the input of Muslims, Palestinians, Israeli, and Jewish members were equal in both quantity and quality? How many individuals were invited into the resolution input and creation, and what is the makeup of this group? Why was the resolution not presented in the immediate wake of the Hamas actions, as was done for Ukraine regarding Russia? Councilor Ahmed, you are quoted by LMP on June 20th as stating a ceasefire resolution could help with the divide between city officials and peace activists. Did these activists include anyone who identified as pro-Israel? What about the related divide between the residents of our city that is occurring? President Baker, you had concerns about potential retaliation against Muslim and Palestinian residents. I'd like councilors to also consider the implications the currently worded resolution may present regarding the potential retaliation of our Jewish and Israeli residents. These residents matter as well. In my research, I found that Lancaster City is one of the oldest Jewish communities in the United States, and they have been here since the early 18th century. A Jewish cemetery was established here in 1747, making it the fourth oldest Jewish cemetery in the U.S. The congregation of Sharai Shomayim is just one of many throughout Lancaster City, just as there are mosques and similar places of worship, each being filled with residents needing remembered and represented during a time of resolution presentation, especially during a potentially polarizing topic. Case in point, New York City. Their resolution to be presented has been tabled due to concerns members had from both sides of the aisle. While researching similar city council resolutions passed through the country, I made a few observations of the resolution that has been provided here before us today. Hamas is not condemned for the terrorist attacks on Israel. There is no condemnation of the ongoing humanitarian crisis and the killing, injuring of innocent civilians on both sides over the last 8 months of warfare. There is no mention of the significant diplomatic and appropriations power that the U.S. federal government has, which can save both Israel and Palestinian lives. There is no call of enforcement of current U.S. and international laws requiring recipients of U.S. military assistance.
Ms. Colon, I apologize, but we have reached 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I do have a copy of a sample resolution that I would like you to consider. Thank you.
You can give that right to the clerk. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Abby Haney. I live on the 600 block of East Madison Street. But today I address you on behalf of Lancaster County Democratic Socialists of America. The resolution you're considering is a product of months of drafting. It has received feedback from many Lancastrians, Palestinians, Muslims, Jews, Mennonites, immigrants, and more. Throughout the revisions, it was important to us that the call for a ceasefire remain central and urgent. We commend the leaders of Lancaster City Council who have introduced this resolution that calls for a ceasefire in Gaza, the end of unconditional U.S. military aid to Israel, and the increased humanitarian assistance in Gaza. It is important to note, however, that the current version of the resolution differs in important ways from what the community proposed, and it fails to hold Israel accountable for the genocide they're committing, a genocide which is funded by our tax dollars. However, this resolution is just one step of many in the process of dismantling Israeli apartheid and fighting for a free Palestine. Members of Council, this is an opportunity for you to be a truly progressive leader in a moment where very few of your colleagues are willing to take a public stance against genocide. Lancaster is known globally as a place welcoming to refugees because of the actions of community members and leaders. Voting yes on this resolution is an opportunity to take action in support of making Lancaster a leading voice in the country and a better place for current and future residents. Therefore, we urge you to vote yes on this resolution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Morgan. I'm from Manor Township. I am here, council members, to amplify the request that you vote yes on the proposed ceasefire resolution. Thank you to the councilman for your support in introducing this resolution on today's agenda. By passing this resolution, we send a powerful message that our city stands behind our moniker of being a welcoming city. We demonstrate our commitment to standing with those who have been marginalized and oppressed, and we condemn the very suffering that leads people to find refuge in our city in the first place. Furthermore, passing this resolution not only demonstrates the commitment to the intentions of being a welcoming city, but also converts those intentions into actions. It shows that we are not merely paying lip service to the idea of being a welcoming city, but that we are actively taking steps to create a safer and more welcoming environment for all who call our city home. Actions speak louder than words, and by passing this resolution, we show our dedication to making our city a place where everyone feels valued, respected, and welcomed. If we claim to be a welcoming city, then we have a responsibility to loudly address condemn the genocide of the Palestinian people. How else will we ever truly be a welcoming place for those refugees if we cannot condemn the blatant suffering inflicted upon them? Permanent ceasefire now, free Palestine. Thank you.
Good evening.
Hello, my name is Josh Cohen, a resident of Manheim Township and a member of Congregation Shari Shamayim. I urge you to vote no to the proposed resolution. The city and city council, I believe, should be focused on the safety and security of Lancaster residents, and in particular, Lancaster's Jewish residents, and not so much in international affairs. That said, the current Israel-Hamas conflict is the result of a defensive war that was forced on Israel starting on October 7th by the horrific attacks by Hamas, a terrorist organization out of Gaza, who targeted, raped, tortured, murdered over 1,200 civilians in their homes at a music festival. We all know the details. It also occurred after Hamas had fired over 30,000 rockets into Israel, and it occurred while there was a ceasefire in place at that time, and yet Hamas completely ignored that ceasefire and started this conflict. This is also after Israel fully withdrew from Gaza, dismantling its own settlements in 2005, giving the Palestinians an opportunity in Gaza to establish their own state, and instead Hamas, a terrorist organization, has been oppressing its own people during that time and has not taken advantage of the opportunities that Israel has given it to establish a Palestinian state. I, of course, along with probably everyone in this room, grieve the loss of innocent lives. The innocent civilian lives who've been killed and hurt and are suffering, including both Palestinians in Gaza as well as Israelis, as well as the Israeli hostages that are still being held by Hamas in Gaza. Notably, Israel has taken extreme measures to minimize civilian casualties during this conflict, while Hamas has admitted that the deaths and suffering of its own people are necessary sacrifices in its own cause. They state very clearly in their charter that their purpose is to kill all Jews in Israel and around the world. It's in writing, it's in their charter. They do not hide from that. I believe City Council has a responsibility to help protect the Jews in this community. Similar resolutions and similar actions and protests around this country and in cities nearby have caused extreme anti-Semitic incidents, violence against Jews, against Jewish organizations and communities. My own daughter, simply because she was standing in a public place wearing a Star of David, was accosted, called a dirty kike, and told all Jews deserve to die. This was at the beginning of the conflict, before there was even all this. So I urge you, please, vote no on the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I was about to address it, I believe. I would ask that any members who are in the room with us tonight, please do refrain from commenting while others are commenting. Members of the public get 3 minutes to address council. If you would like to have a conversation with each other, you can step outside of the room. Thank you very much. Good evening.
My name is Christopher Brooks. I live on Virginia Avenue in Lancaster City. I strongly urge you not to pass this resolution. Does the City Council want peace? I want peace. The Israelis did not want this war. They did not start this war. The Israelis want peace. But Hamas and their supporters don't want peace. They want to obliterate Israel, as demonstrated clearly by these verbatim quotes from the Hamas charter, issued on August 18th, 1988. I quote, Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. Preamble. The land of Palestine is an Islamic waqf consecrated for future Muslim generations until Judgment Day. No one can renounce it or any part of it, or abandon it or any part of it. Article 11. Peace initiatives and so-called peaceful solutions in international conferences are in contradiction to the principles of the Islamic resistance movement. Initiatives, proposals, and international conferences are but a waste of time and exercise in futility. Article 13. There's a lot more, but I've only got 3 minutes. The only appropriate response to the October 7th massacres and to the defensive Israeli war is to demand the release of all the hostages, including 8 American citizens held by Hamas, and that Hamas surrender. If the Hamas leaders gave a damn about Palestinians, this is what they would have done months ago. Thus, if the Israelis win, there will be peace. If Hamas survives, the war continues indefinitely. Israel is a sovereign, democratic, multi-ethnic, multi-religious nation with a true citizens' army comprising their sons and their daughters. The Israelis have no interest in occupying Gaza, having withdrawn entirely in 2005. The Gazans were then given a potential Mediterranean paradise and billions in foreign aid. They had one election and then proceeded to brainwash their children, dig miles of military tunnels, and launch periodic tunnel, rocket, and even incendiary balloon attacks on Israel, culminating in the horrendous massacres on October 7th. Does City Council know anything about fighting a war against an enemy that holds hostages and uses their own civilian deaths as propaganda? This is an impossible situation. The IDF and Israeli leadership are working it out the best they can, and they don't need your advice. So City Council has a choice here. If you really desire peace, then a good start would be to cease providing propaganda for Hamas, such as this proposed resolution. But you can do more. Hamas has promised to repeat the October 7th massacres. You can do more. You can support Israel in its struggle. They deserve your support.
Everybody gets the same amount of time. I
Thank you.
appreciate your comments tonight. Thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is James Wallman, W-O-L-M-A-N. I'm an attorney in Lancaster. I've been in practice in this city for 50 years. I'm here tonight for 2 purposes. One is to read the remarks of Rabbi Jack Paskoff, the spiritual leader of Congregation Cherry Shemayim, who can't be here tonight because he's elsewhere. And then I would reserve about 30 seconds to make my own comment. When I speak in the first person, I'm speaking as Rabbi Paskoff. This resolution being discussed tonight has gone through many iterations. I imagine I have only seen some of them. We must first acknowledge that one of the groups backing this resolution is Lancaster Stands Up, an organization that condemns Israel within hours of the horrific attack perpetrated by Hamas terrorists on October 7th, before a single Palestinian in Gaza has been killed in response. With that in mind, let's be cautious of the intent of the group that proposes this resolution. As many of us have, I have been living since October 7th with a sense of fear and sadness. The crime Hamas perpetrated that day cannot be forgiven or rationalized. The pain of Palestinians can't be denied. The realities of crimes committed against Jews and Muslims in our own country and around the world since cannot be overstated. As we look at the big picture of a long-term solution of the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, I have long been on the record as supporting a 2-state solution. My question is, which Palestinian faction has the ability to negotiate in good faith on behalf of a future state of Palestine? It cannot be Hamas or Hezbollah, in which, it cannot be Hamas or Hezbollah sworn to destruction of Israel, nor can it be an impotent and corrupt Palestinian authority. This supports my contention held for 20 years or more that the dilemma will not be resolved around the negotiating tables by leaders interested only in preserving the status quo, nor will it be resolved by international leaders from the United States, Qatar, or Egypt. It certainly won't be resolved by blocking roads, occupying college buildings, or otherwise disrupting campus life and attempting to intimidate Jewish students. And it won't be resolved by a city council resolution. For much longer than 8 months, I have expressed the best hope for a lasting and just peace is through amplifying the voices of peacemaking organizations.
Mr. Woolman, I apologize, but 3 minutes is up. I know
All right.
you're reading Rabbi Kostov's comments, and he did also send them to council in writing, so
All right.
we do have them in full.
All right. May I just add 30 seconds of my own?
I will allow that, yes.
Thank you. I echo some of the people who stood here before and spoke about the imbalanced nature of the war between Hamas and Israel, between citing hostages among the civilian population and then blaming Israel when they try and free them. I urge this resolution be denied, be voted down. It is not balanced. It should call for Hamas to change its tactics to recognize Israel as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woolman. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Tama Etra. I live at 231 East Clay Street in Lancaster. I would like to read some comments that were actually given to me, and they are direct quotes from the Hamas Charter of 1988. The Covenant of the Islamic Resistance Movement was issued on August 18, 1988. The Islamic Resistance Movement, also known as Hamas, is an extremist, fundamentalist Islamic organization operating in the territories under Israeli control. Its covenant is a comprehensive manifesto comprised of 36 separate articles, all of which promote the basic Hamas goal of destroying the state of Israel through jihad, Islamic holy war. The following are excerpts of the Hamas covenant. And I would like to add, too, that I'm very grateful that I live in a country, in a city, that I do not have to worry about a rabid dog right at my next door all the time, as Israel does. The goals of the Hamas. The Islamic Resistance Movement is a distinguished Palestinian movement whose allegiance is to Allah and whose way of life is Islam. It strives to raise the banner of Allah over every inch of Palestine. On the destruction of Israel, Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. The land of Palestine is an Islamic holy possession consecrated for future Muslim generations until Judgment Day. No one can renounce it or any part of it or abandon it in any part of it. Palestine is an Islamic land. Since this is the case, the liberation of Palestine is an individual duty for every Muslim, wherever he may be. Rejection of a negotiated peace settlement. Peace initiatives and so-called peaceful solutions and international conferences are in contradiction to the principles of Islamic resistance movement. Those conferences are no more than a means to appoint the infidels as arbitrators in the land of Islam. There is no solution for the Palestinian problem except by jihad. Initiatives, proposals, and international conferences are but a waste of time and exercise in futility. Anti-Semitic incitement. The day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight Jews and kill them. Then the Jews will hide behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees
I
will...
apologize, but you have reached 3 minutes.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Good evening, sir.
My name is Stan Mullen. I have property in the 200 block of East Orange Street, and I am one of the pastors at Calvary Church here in Lancaster. On September 11, 2001, terrorist forces attacked the United States, killing upwards of 3,000 innocent civilians. In the aftermath, the United States went to war against the Taliban in an attempt to destroy that terrorist group and prevent future terrorist attacks. The whole world knew this was a justified war. I don't remember calls for a ceasefire, at least in those early years, because everyone knew that the Taliban was evil and needed to be defeated. That war lasted 20 years, and by some counts, as many as 170,000 civilians lost their lives in the process. That's a tragedy of war, that innocents often end up losing their lives along with the evil. On October 7th, 2023, terrorist forces attacked Israel, slaughtering some 1,200 innocent civilians. But the evil portrayed in this attack was vastly worse than what the United States experienced on 9/11. Young people were mowed down with gunfire like it was a turkey shoot. Women were raped while their husbands were forced to watch, while their baby roasted to death in the oven. Children were tied together with zip ties, doused with gasoline, set on fire. Piles of babies were found decapitated. Men and women were sexually assaulted, then mutilated before they were shot to death and their bodies chopped to pieces. It was perhaps the most horrific terrorist attack ever perpetrated in the history of the world. And Hamas, the terrorist organization behind the nightmare, has declared their intent to repeat October 7 over and over and over again. If ever there was a justified war in the history of mankind, this is it. And it's not a war against the Palestinian people, as it has been described. It is a war against Hamas. Hamas is an existential threat to Israel, and they must be destroyed. Any attempt to force a ceasefire before that goal is reached offers direct support to the terrorists of Hamas and is clearly anti-Israel and anti-Semitic. Should the city of Lancaster lend its support to the demonic evils of Hamas by calling for a ceasefire so that Hamas can survive to carry out its atrocities over and over again? Would we bring such shame on our beloved city by foolishly adopting such a misguided and hurtful resolution? There are evils in this world against which good people must stand firm. There are fights worth fighting all the way to the end. To issue a resolution which does nothing but support Hamas and attack Israel and the Jewish people would be a shameful tragedy. Is this the job which you, our city council, have been tasked with doing? I would argue that it is not, and you should run away from such involvement. I beseech you to vote no on this resolution and devote your energies to those things which are for the good of this city. Thank you for listening.
Good evening. My name is Gregory Larkin. I live in East Hempfield on the edge of Lancaster. I am here tonight in support of this resolution. I think it is an excellent step. It is by no means what needs to be done in terms of its entirety, but it's an excellent first step. First of all, the Zionist genocide of the Palestinian people must be opposed. For 100 years, Zionists have gone into Palestine and ethnically cleansed literally hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, millions of Palestinians from their homes, and treated them as subhuman animals to be pushed into ever smaller enclaves. This is far in excess of the apartheid regime in South Africa, which many people, I'm old enough to remember this, opposed in the 80s and brought that to a thing. For the American government to be buying the weapons for Israel to destroy Gaza is insane, and that's another step of our own government. If we want to have peace in Palestine, it must be based on equality of all human beings in the entire country and a return of property to its rightful owners. That is the only way peace has ever been established anywhere on earth. To believe that the settler imperialists have a right to murder and steal is craziness. And I would urge this as a very first step to pass this resolution. Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Hi. My name is Nick Silveri Hiller, 400 Block North Plum Street. I'm a member and organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and I've lived in Lancaster for almost 10 years. As I said last time I was here, I've spoken in front of you many times on social, racial justice issues in this city, and I believe that this is actually one of the most important issues that I've come here to speak to you about, passing a resolution for a ceasefire. I want to take a moment to try to take a moment for us to comprehend the situation in Gaza. And to put it into some context, let's start with the 20,000 children in Gaza that have gone missing due to the airstrikes and bombings, and the additional 15,000 children that have been killed amidst Israel's genocidal campaign. To put this into perspective, the school district of Lancaster has 10,075 students. That's nearly 3 times the amount of students that live in this city have been killed or went missing due to airstrikes in Gaza in just the past 8 months. The scale of this violence is beyond what most of us can even imagine, and it is and this is only the most recent assault on the people of Palestine since 1948. I'll just briefly end with, I stand with the people of Palestine, and this resolution should stand with the people of Palestine. Palestine will be free in our lifetime. We will see in our lifetime our Palestinian siblings returning to their homes and lands that have been stolen from them. The people of Gaza show us that their resilience, that the people's determination for freedom is stronger than any wall, any checkpoint, any bomb, even with the billions of dollars, even from Lancaster and our state, and from the United States. So end the siege on Gaza, free Palestine. Thank you.
My name is Jeffrey Muffson, a resident of Manheim Township. I very much want to support a ceasefire resolution. However, I would urge the council not to support it in its current form. Hamas has already stated their goal to commit the atrocities of October 7th repeatedly against the Israeli people. Indeed, their ultimate aim is to destroy the state of Israel. Any ceasefire that leaves Hamas in place is a fantasy and will not lead to a durable peace and is harmful to the Palestinian people. Let's not forget that on October 6th, there was no war in Gaza. The Hamas leadership has been quoted as saying they're happy to see more civilian deaths as martyrs for their cause. Since this resolution is a purely symbolic gesture, my recommendation would be to amend it to include language that in addition to a permanent ceasefire, Hamas should lay down their arms and transfer power to a legitimate Arab governing authority. This is the only path to a truly sustainable peace. An alternative, more reasonable resolution would be one that calls on Hamas to accept the ceasefire resolution proposed by the United States on June 11th and accepted by the United Nations Security Council and countries from around the world. Today, the U.S. State Department has characterized Hamas's response to this actual ceasefire proposal as a rejection. Hamas's leadership has led to death and destruction for both the Israelis and the Palestinians. This resolution should make it clear that there is no symmetry between Israel, a democratic ally of the United States, and the sadistic terror organization of Hamas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Miller Glick. I live in Hager Street in Lancaster. I want to thank you for considering the Lancaster City ceasefire resolution, and I urge you to vote for it. Almost 2,000 people have died since I last stood before you about 4 weeks ago. When we say that this is a genocide, it is not rhetoric, but credible fact that is backed by multiple experts, including Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur in Palestine. While we debate this issue, our Palestinian neighbors, some of whom are probably with us today, have friends and family whose lives are in danger in Gaza. I don't know what it is like to wake up every day worrying for the safety of my friends and family thousands of miles away, but I know that nobody should ever have to feel that. Doing nothing is unacceptable, and that is why we need to pass this resolution. I recognize that this resolution will not end the genocide, but what it will do is add to the international pressure to end the war. It will show our Palestinian neighbors that their city affirms their right to life and dignity, and it will prove that our city really is a welcoming one. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Alessandra McAlery. I live on 37 South Ann Street. You've heard and will hear several very good arguments why you should pass the proposed ceasefire resolution for Gaza. Sorry, I'm very nervous, and you will understand why. But I'm here to discuss the consequences of not passing that ceasefire resolution. I was born and grew up in post-war Germany. My parents were children during the Holocaust. My grandparents were not Nazis. They were farmers, much like a lot of people around Lancaster. But that didn't stop people from asking them, why didn't you stand up to the Nazis? But what should my grandparents have done without risking their life? Today, you have the option to do something and speak up against the genocide that is perpetrated against the Palestinian people in Gaza without risking your life. If you don't do it for the men, women, and children in Gaza, you must do it for our children, our children's children. They also will ask you, what did you do to prevent the genocide in Gaza? Do you think they'll forgive you if they'll see images of babies with their heads blown off? They're the ones who will have to bear the guilt and hatred from others for you being on the wrong side of history. Believe me, I know, I've lived it. My entire life I had to live with the guilt of being a descendant of Nazis. Whenever my parents or I went to a foreign country, we were spit at, had rocks thrown at us, and were called Nazis or Bosch. Even my 25-year-old biracial daughter was still harassed for being German. My parents' generation was severely traumatized by the Allied bombs on Hamburg and the Holocaust and suffered from PTSD all their lives. This generational trauma continues to live on. It will also live on, just like the Holocaust in the Jewish people, it will live on in the children of the IDF soldiers who are executing this genocide. The trauma, of course, will mostly affect the children of Gaza. Did you know that 80% of Hamas resistance fighters are orphans? They're orphaned by previous Israeli attacks on the Palestinian people. By the way, Israel has no right under international law to defend itself against the people it occupies. You have the chance to minimize the trauma that will sure arise from Israel's attack on Gaza. Look at these young people. Their scholarships, their careers, their college degrees are jeopardized because they're speaking up against this genocide. Please have the same courage as they have and be on the right side of history. Pass the resolution.
Good evening, sir. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name's Rich Woolman. I live on Lehman Road. Tonight serves as a litmus test for the city. Is it going to continue being a beacon of hope and inspiration for all of us, serving as a leader by bringing all of us together as a truly welcoming and fully inclusive city for all peoples, or will it devolve into an exclusionary mission by adopting a narrow, politically divisive position on a highly complex international issue without including any constructive or long-term solutions? The city can't have it both ways. Either it is welcoming, supportive, and inclusive of all peoples, both immigrants and non-immigrants, regardless of their background, ethnicity, race, religion, gender orientation, political viewpoint, or economic position, or not. If not, and the city adopts this proposed resolution, It will mean that the city values certain segments of the community and their positions over others, thereby alienating and marginalizing certain members of the community. It will be a very sad day and the end of a beautiful legacy of celebrating universal values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening, Council President. Thank you. I'm Sean Domensic, 400 block of Fremont Street, a Catholic Christian, a member of St. Joseph Catholic Church. I'm here to support Councilor Ahmed's resolution, and I thank you for the courage to bring it to Council. I'd like to bring the Word of God to Council's considerations. The Hebrew prophet Isaiah said, "On that day, the day of the Messiah, they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. One nation shall not raise the sword against another, nor shall they train for war again." That day, the day of the Messiah, has come. Jesus Christ, the Lord, has come to the earth in his humility, teaching us the way to live. And what has he said? He's put it even more boldly. "You have heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." He said also, "You have heard it said, amen, it is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I say to you, offer no resistance to the one who is evil. This is why I do not believe in the right of Hamas to make war, nor Israel's right, nor the United States. For a follower of Jesus Christ, war is never a solution." It is God's clear work in the hearts of this council that you have even brought to consideration this resolution, which seeks the path of peace rather than the violent way of the world. But I must warn you that you can safely stand on the right side of history to be a welcoming city in God's eyes only if you repent of your sins and accept Jesus Christ as your Lord. Peace is more than mere words, more than a mere resolution. It is a total change of our way of life. Peace is not conformable with hating our enemies, whether they are near or far, with violence, with greed, with every sort of evil that comes from our hearts, with how we treat the homeless in the city, as I've frequently brought up to the right to rest. All these priorities must change if we are to seek the good news. But there is good news. Jesus Christ died in solidarity with the poor, rose in the power of the Spirit, and he gives us the gift of a clean conscience if only we accept it and give our true allegiance to the good news of God's peace, which the Church joyfully proclaims even to this day. Council members, please know that you are always in my prayers. May God guide the hearts of all people of goodwill towards the Lord's way of peace. Thank you.
Thank you.
Was not expecting that, but hi, Stacy Behrman, State Street, Lancaster City. Thank you to the council for considering this resolution. Since last October, there have been many voices speaking about what they feel want to be done in Israel, Gaza, the West Bank, and the entire region. Many of those voices have only acknowledged the suffering of some of the people affected by this conflict, or, more grotesquely, have taken advantage of our pain to advance their own political or religious agendas. This resolution comes from a place of good heart and a commitment to serving all the people of Lancaster. Lancaster is a wonderful, welcoming city that promotes and embraces its diversity in a location where those of us who are not Christian and white often feel marginalized. The persistence of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism did not begin in Lancaster County on October 7th, but it certainly has seen an increase that has echoed the surge in both of these in the past 8 months. This resolution recognizes that explicitly those citizens of Lancaster who are Palestinian, who are Israeli, who are Muslim and Jewish, we are not the only people who feel pain arising from the conflict in Gaza and Israel, but we are the marginalized individuals who have not consistently seen the level of community support that we deserve. The city of Lancaster is not going to bring about peace in the Middle East through a resolution like this. What it can do is acknowledge the pain of its own citizens and resolve to protect them and their loved ones in this time of crisis. I appreciate that this resolution does not just call upon compassion combatants thousands of miles away to respond to the demands of our small city. It resolves to do better for the people here. That commitment is the difference between political theatrics and service to the community. The Arabic word salam and the Hebrew word shalom both came from the same origin. In English, both of these words are usually translated to mean peace, but we are taught that the meaning in the original language is more sophisticated than how the term is used in English. In English, you can have peace simply ceasing to perpetuate violence. A ceasefire, however you might define it, would be considered the equivalent of peace, but shalom salam requires a more positive intentionality. It requires an active recognition of the needs and context of the people who are affected and the ongoing maintenance of the relationships to ensure that the people live not just without fear of immediate violence, but in conditions where they can prosper and thrive. The resolution acknowledges that the complexity and context, rather than a simple call for a generic ceasefire that lacks any awareness of how that could be achieved or maintained, what is both wise and brave about this resolution is the acknowledgement that a short-term cessation of fighting is insufficient, just as your resolution begins with an acknowledgement of the many different people who have been hurt and directly hurt and impacted by violence in Israel and Gaza and the West Bank since October. It concludes by calling for a multilateral and lasting ceasefire. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Brown, and I live on the 200 block of North Lime Street. I'm here tonight to urgently encourage all council members to vote against this resolution. In its current form, it is missing critical facts, paints an inaccurate picture, further nurturing anti-Semitism, as we can see by letters to the editor on June 23rd in LMP, as well as many of the comments here tonight. It is also not clear of the city's support of the Jewish people. I would propose that these changes would be necessary in order for the resolution to be improved. At the first whereas, it should state, whereas Hamas terrorists and the governing body of Gaza launched an attack on Israel on October 7th, 2023 that resulted in more than 1,200 deaths and the taking of at least 240 hostages, with at least 45% of those 764 civilians were women and children, some of which were brutally raped, dismembered, and burned alive. And whereas since that day, approximately 36,000 Palestinians have been killed and approximately 81,000 wounded by hostilities between Israel and Hamas, with at least half of the dead and wounded being women and children, as well as over 300 Israelis, mostly IDF soldiers. And additional whereases, and whereas since the day of October 7th, Hamas and its supporters have launched over 19,000 rockets into Israel. And whereas Hamas, through its foundational covenant vows to destroy the state of Israel and kill all Jewish people anywhere in the world and propagates anti-Semitism, and whereas the city of Lancaster recognizes that the Jewish people have a right to live and to defend themselves against attacks, and to exist as a nation in the land promised to them by God. I do want to recognize that standing with Israel, that I encourage this council to do, and the Jewish people does not mean standing for every decision of the Israeli government or every decision of an individual Jewish person. Rather, Lancaster City and its residents expect this council to stand and pray for peace in a balanced fashion, which this resolution does not do, and welcome to our city people of all faiths who respect, who dignify, and value every life. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Haggai Nassau. I'm a resident of Lancaster City on the 600 block of State Street. I would like to urge City Council to not adopt this resolution for several reasons. First of all, the job of City Council is to run the city, not to issue pronouncements on global affairs. The Israel-Palestine conflict is one of the most complex problems in the world, and there are city residents with extremely strong opinions on all sides of the issue. Coming up with a city council resolution that would fairly represent the views of the entire city is probably not possible, even if council were to spend thousands of hours studying the roots of the conflict. Therefore, I urge City Council to instead devote its time to focusing on the many local issues that City Council is responsible for. Second, passing a ceasefire resolution in Lancaster City will do absolutely nothing to bring about the peace that all of us hope for. It would serve only to divide city residents against one another. Third, it is completely insane to demand that Israel stop fighting against the terrorist group that has promised that it will continue to perpetrate massacres like the one it carried out on October 7th. On that day, members of that misogynistic, homophobic group attacked families sitting down to breakfast in their homes. They brutally tortured and raped men, women, and children. During World War II, no one in their right mind would have demanded that America stop fighting the Nazis until after that evil regime had been destroyed. Hamas could end this war today by surrendering and releasing the innocent people that it is keeping chained up in underground dungeons. Fourth, the proposed City Council resolution calls for the U.S. to stop providing unconditioned military aid to Israel. Ever since Israel was founded, the surrounding countries have been trying to push it into the sea. Now, Israel is facing the fanatical Ayatollahs of Iran, who are obsessed with destroying Israel. In addition to funding Hamas, Iran also supports Hezbollah, a much stronger terrorist group, which is also committed to destroying Israel. Hezbollah is stepping up their deadly attacks, making a large part of northern Israel unlivable. Putting restrictions on our assistance to Israel would place the only democracy in the Middle East in deadly peril. In conclusion, I urge City Council to not wade into this contentious foreign policy issue that has no bearing on city affairs. It would serve only to divide city residents against one another. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Miriam Baumgartner. I am a resident of Manor Township and president of the Jewish Community Alliance of Lancaster, a county-wide organization. I want to begin by thanking you, the members of Lancaster City Council, and the community members who have come forward to assist in creating a meaningful resolution. While I do not agree that this or any individual city needs such a resolution, if it's going to happen, then all voices must be heard. I have read and studied the proposed resolution calling for, quote, a ceasefire in the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict in Gaza, unquote. I believe words and details matter, so let's call it what it is, a war between Israel and Hamas that began October 7th, 2023, when Hamas terrorists invaded Israel, tortured, raped, burned, and killed approximately 1,200 people, and took several hundred Israeli, American, Thai, and other civilian hostages to Gaza. This is not an Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In fact, the Palestinian civilians and society at large in Gaza have been seriously harmed by Hamas's actions. The proposed resolution states as fact that, quote, approximately 38,000 Palestinians have been killed and approximately 81,000 wounded, unquote, and continues, quote, with at least half of the dead and wounded being women and children, unquote. These statistics are based on statements from Hamas and have not been confirmed by any outside organization. They are not necessarily, in fact, true. The detail that is most important is not included at all. While this proposed resolution calls for a ceasefire to the war and the return of all hostages, among other international requirements, it does not call to disarm or replace the Hamas government and leadership in Gaza. Hamas has been named a terrorist organization by the United States, Canada, the European Union, Israel, the United Kingdom, and others. Hamas has proven over many years that they do not want peace with Israel. In fact, they do not want Israel to exist as an independent country and the only homeland for Jews in the entire world. Hamas and some pro-Palestinian activists refrain from the river to the sea, meaning the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, encompasses all the land of Israel. The goal of Hamas to eliminate Israel as an independent state is and should be to all unacceptable. Palestinians in Gaza would have much better lives without Hamas in control. Hamas has repeatedly shown that destroying Israel is a much higher priority than caring for Palestinians living under their rule.
Ms. Bonner, we have reached 3 minutes. Thank you.
I also have a very brief reading from another resident who couldn't be here this evening.
If you could allow the rest of the residents to speak, if that would be great, and then we will read their name into the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean, I love you as my brother in Christ, but you're living in a false reality, my brother.
Sir, could you please begin with your name and block of residence for the meeting record?
I'm David Alexander. I live in Ephrata. I'm here because in recent months I've witnessed evil and hatred I thought was put to rest long ago. I was wrong. Many Saturdays I stand in downtown Lancaster with a lot of people around here in support of Israel and its right to defend itself. Every week I witness unbridled hatred towards Jews. I had conversations with many local anti-Semites, members of PSL and SJP, again, right here in this room, who stated unashamedly they support Hamas terrorists and the heinous barbaric crimes they committed on October 7th. We must remember, Israel had peace on October 6th. Hamas took it away. For those promoting peace, Israel wants peace. They've made that clear. There are two conditions to be met and the war ends immediately. There have been 17 ceasefire resolutions on the table that the U.S. and Israel have accepted. Hamas hasn't accepted one. If Hamas just frees the hostages, dismantles its terror infrastructure, this war is over. But spreading Hamas propaganda and giving them the opportunity to rearm will not bring peace. It will only perpetuate further war. Hamas has to be stopped. You've already heard what's in their founding charter. Who are we to tell Israel to stop defending itself against these barbaric animals? We're all here tonight only because brave men and women died in wars protecting these United States. Yes, you all too. What hypocrites we are even considering such a resolution against Israel. Where's the outcry regarding the 110 other armed conflicts taking place right now worldwide? The targeting of only one nation tells us about the proponents of this resolution. Demands for a ceasefire that leave Hamas in power as government of Gaza are immoral and counterproductive. This can never be allowed in good conscience. It's also important to recognize the appointed function of each role within our local government. In recent weeks, I've made multiple attempts to contact each of you. Thank you, Councilwoman Diaz. I'm sorry you're not here tonight, for your common sense response stating the proposed ceasefire resolution is not in line with our primary mandate to address local governance and community issues. It's important to recognize that international conflicts are generally managed by national and international bodies better equipped to handle such matters. Thus, it's not in the best interest of our city to intervene in these complex international issues. I appeal to this council. Let's get back to hearing issues that can actually be addressed to better our community. We need to bring people together, not fuel hatred towards one another and others around the world. We shouldn't stand for hatred and elimination of Jews and should never champion the cause of those who devote their lives to an actual genocide of all Jewish people. If council members here support organized terrorism, then you'll vote yes tonight. If you stand for freedom of all and are against oppression and hatred, you would not demand a ceasefire that will give victory to Hamas terrorists. Please have the courage displayed by those in Coatesville City Council, local Harrisburg leadership, to name a couple, where they even voiced their unwavering support for our biggest ally in the Middle East. I urge each of you to vote no tonight on this ceasefire resolution. Thank you.
Good evening, Dina Mayonis, 500 block of East Chestnut Street. While researching similar city council resolutions passed throughout the country, I made a few observations of the resolution that has been provided here before us today. Hamas is not condemned for the terrorist attacks on Israel and the hostage-taking of innocent civilians on October 7th. There is no condemnation of the ongoing humanitarian crisis and the killing, injuring of innocent civilians on both sides over the last 8 months of warfare. There is no mention of the significant diplomatic and appropriations power that the U.S. federal government has, which can save both Israeli and Palestinian lives. There is no call of enforcement of current U.S. and international laws requiring recipients of the U.S. military assistance like Israel, to comply with human rights standards and international humanitarian law, versus simply calling for placing restrictions on an entity receiving U.S. military aid, which also doesn't address the concern of who is funding Hamas. Anti-Israeli discrimination should be added to the commitment by the city to combat discrimination. Wordage should be added that the city has an entity, supports Jewish, Israeli, Palestinian, and Muslim residents, and encourages all of us to do the same. There should be a call to the Biden administration and international community to work towards long-term solutions that afford safety and dignity to all people in Israel, Palestine, Gaza, and in the region, which will foster just and representation government for both Palestinians and Israel. Another published public reason behind this call for a resolution was to force the Biden administration to take notice of demands. To that, I would add the Biden administration is aware and has taken notice. This is evident in press remarks by Secretary of the State Anthony Blinken this month, in which he recently announced $404 million in additional humanitarian assistance for Palestinians in Gaza, the West Bank, and the region. This brings the total humanitarian aid that the U.S. has announced for Palestinians to more than $674 million since the beginning of the conflict. In addition, he stated 10 days ago, President Biden put forward a proposal that would produce an immediate ceasefire in Gaza to get all the hostages home and put us on a path to enduring resolution to the conflict in Gaza. It's a proposal that is very close to what Hamas itself had agreed to some time before. Since the president put the proposal forward, countries throughout the region and around the world, as well as international organizations have all endorsed. Israel has accepted it, and the only outlier in this moment is Hamas. City Council, tonight your true colors will show. You'll stand with peace or you'll stand with terrorists. Either way, you are the divide. Thank you.
My name is Stephanie Kramer. I live on the 200 block of East Marion Street. I apologize for the rough nature of my component to this presentation. I did not plan on attending this meeting tonight, and I literally just composed these words as I was sitting in my chair waiting to speak. The Israel-Hamas conflict is deeply personal to me. I was supposed to be attending a trip to Israel about 10 days after that attack occurred. I watched news reports of some of the atrocities there. Someone with whom I work was a tourist as well, got stuck there at that time. And my feelings about that are that the job of the Lancaster City Council is to govern the city of Lancaster, not to make demands of international leaders, a lane in which it has absolutely no place. I have lived here since 2012. When I moved here, I thought Lancaster was really special. I grew up in a small town. I lived in big cities. On my block, we had millionaires, we had homeless people, we had people in apartments, and people in modest houses like mine. And somehow we all got along and all lived together. People were respectful of each other. I'm very, very sorry to say that I haven't felt Lancaster is this way anymore and haven't for a very long time. And it's issues like this that are contributing to that. I would like to take this opportunity to quote one of my favorite podcasters, Ben Shapiro, who himself is Jewish. Ben is a tough person, much like me. He says it as he calls it. My favorite line of Ben's is, "Facts don't care about your feelings." Remember that Palestinians cheered in the streets on our 9/11. The October 7th Hamas invasion of Gaza is Israel's equivalent of 9/11. I'd also like you to take a good hard look at the most vociferous pro-Palestinian protesters you have seen on the news and on social media. Here in the city, and yes, some of those you see around you in this room today. We are 4 years post-pandemic. I'm a frontline provider. I'm an airway responder. I worked in the pandemic. People are still wearing masks. And ask yourself this: are the same people who are triggered over this the same people who are triggered over everything else?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Elazar Green. I live on the 600 block of Race Avenue. I'm a rabbi, director of Chabad of Lancaster, spiritual advisor at Chabad of Franklin Marshall College. I also don't have prepared remarks, but I wanted to come up and share just a few thoughts. There's an old joke: if you give a rabbi an opportunity to speak, he's not going to turn it down. So I have 3 minutes. I'd like to start off with asking whoever wants to join me for 10 seconds of silence. We've heard tonight very different opinions about what is happening in the Middle East. And the way I like to think about it is we are all filtering the news in the world through our own life experiences. And it's almost like when a person has an opinion, it's built on things they see and they've experienced, and we're all watching our own individual movie or TV show. And we ask ourselves, wait, why didn't you see what just happened on this show or in this? And the other person doesn't, because they're watching a different show. They see different facts, they see different contexts, and it's very difficult to bridge, to have people to be on the same page. For that, I'd like to thank the council for creating an opportunity, a forum, to have important discussions, deep discussions. And even though this is not about the city of Lancaster, we're here together as a community, divided opinions, but together discussing. And for that alone, this whole thing was worth it. I'm going to ask you to vote no on this resolution. And the reason is because I believe that we have to think about the voices of the people who are affected. We shouldn't just have old white men talking about women's issues. And we shouldn't have every audience, every demographic, every population needs to have a voice and think matters that affect them. Today you've heard from the Jewish community, you've heard from leadership, from JCAL, from Share, and we've also had input from conservative as well, the Orthodox as well. Every organized Jewish religious house in Lancaster is asking you to vote no. And I'm going to add my voice to them. If anyone wants to talk, I'll be outside or hang around, whatever it is. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, everybody. Thanks for allowing open forum. I'm Carolyn McCalebs. I live in the 1200 block. I live in the 1200 block of East King Street, Carolyn McCalebs. So I'm actually in Lancaster Township, but the east version, there's an east and a west. Okay, so not quite city, but I appreciate the place, and I'm still talking, sorry. Okay, I've lived here for 16 years. I have 2 kids, a little about me, that's all. I speak to us as humans, first, that all children are our children. All children are our children. Cease fire now. All the fire, cease all the fire all around the world. I'll sign any petition that puts down guns, puts them down. I hope you will too. And now I speak to us as Americans. This resolution matters, even though I don't know how much it matters. Might just be a tiny, tiny bit. But America is responsible for the great military might of Israel, so we as Americans have a voice in containing violence. We should speak up and not lose hope that it makes a difference. And then last, I'd like to speak to those of us who call ourselves Christians. The people Israel are clearly special to God. To what extent is a topic for lively debate beyond these walls. But even his chosen do not have blanket permission to eradicate a people. No permission to torture. No permission to separate children from their parents. I say that to America. We have no permission to do this. I can talk about the borders too, but that's another resolution for another day, I hope. Lastly, we Christians know Jesus, and what he wants for his kingdom is peace. This kingdom is not coming to earth by way of violence. Ceasefire now. Thank you for letting me speak.
Good evening.
Sorry, good evening. My name is Aaron Safran, 700 block North Duke Street. I thought long and hard before coming up to this podium, even as I was sitting here listening to everybody else. I am a resident of the city of Lancaster. I'm a U.S.-born dual national of the United States of America and the State of Israel. People mentioned that Israelis were asked about this resolution. I don't know how many of us there are here. I certainly was not one of them. The result of an immediate and permanent multilateral ceasefire to the war in Gaza at this time would leave Hamas in control of the Gaza Strip. If that is what you want and what you are calling for, it would be a good idea, I believe, to familiarize yourselves with what Hamas is, in their own words, as recorded in the Hamas Charter, aka the Covenant of the Islamic Resistance Movement. It's been quoted enough already, I believe. I would like to quote from William Shire's The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. About the period of time in the war, my father, Corporal Murray Safran, U.S. Army Infantry, Purple Heart, fought back in his day. Not every German who bought a copy of Mein Kampf necessarily read it, but it might be argued that had more non-Nazi Germans read it before 1933, and had the foreign statesmen of the world perused it carefully while there was still time, both Germany and the world would have been saved from catastrophe. Hamas leaders have openly and publicly promised to repeat the barbaric acts of October 7th attack, given the opportunity. Personally, I take them at their word. I'm hoping you will too. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Brianna, and I'm an F&M student. I didn't have anything like I prepared for to say, but I just wanted to ask the simple question. First, the United States thought slavery was a good idea. Let's be honest.
You could just address your comment for council, please. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So based on that, like how many of your great-grandfathers or great-grandmothers would have voted no to ending slavery? As we see, history repeats itself. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Blauberg. I live on the 200 block of West Grant Street. I might be the only person on the 200 block of West Grant Street. My daughter's in the hallway. Her name's Luna. I wasn't prepared to speak today. Clearly, I'm not dressed for the occasion, but I felt compelled to speak. I'm a Jewish man. I'm in Lancaster. My daughter is born in Lancaster. She follows in the footsteps of Joseph Simon and the other Jews who have lived here and have dealt with oppression and persecution, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. What is absent in a lot of this discussion is the acknowledgement of the necessity of Israel, not necessarily their actions. Beyond the Holocaust, there was the Farhud in 1941 in Iraq that displaced Mizrahi Jews. There was the Jewish population in Yemen, who as of 2018 no longer exist. There are no more Jews in Yemen. In the history of the Jewish global population outside of North America, the number has only reached the 1930s levels in the last 10 years, 42% of those people are in Israel. If there was not the existence of Israel, there simply would not be Jews outside of North America today. And I feel that that gets lost in the conversation. And if you're wondering why your Jewish neighbors are worried and scared when these sort of conversations come up, that's why. But, and this is why I'm afraid that I'm going to isolate myself from my community. I'm so sorry, but what's going on in Gaza is a massacre. A massacre. What's happening to these Gazans is awful. Thousands, tens of thousands of them are dying. And that is undeniably a crime, undeniably an abuse of human rights. And something does need to be done, and an acknowledgement that these people are suffering is a good thing. But I beg this council to include the acknowledgement of the necessity of Israel in that statement as well. That is a balanced resolution. The need that Jews need safety, but these people do not deserve to be killed. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jenny Calabrese. I live on the 500 block of North Street, and I'm here to speak in support of the ceasefire resolution tonight. A major focus of tonight's comments in opposition to the ceasefire resolution have centered Hamas as the only motivation behind Israel's attack on Palestine. So I would like to share a list of policies pursued by Israel that have nothing to do with Hamas and that of which have existed long before October 7th, 2023. Number one, Israel has complete control over Palestinian water supply. It will use its power as leverage and a tool for coercion when met with Palestinian resistance. Israel intentionally bombs water infrastructure and actively prevents repair or maintenance. Now is a good time to add that all of these items on my list came directly from sources from the United Nations. Number two, Israel routinely sprays Palestinian farmland with herbicides. The Israeli military sprays border zones with herbicides, including Palestinian farmland, in regular intervals to prevent agriculture without compensating Palestinian farmers for the damage. Number three, Israel blocks the trade of goods and services between Palestinian cities. Israel prevents merchant trading between Ramallah, Gaza, East Jerusalem, and the rest of the West Bank, denying Palestinians the opportunity to create an effective domestic market. Number four, Palestinian goods do not have free access to the Israeli market as per the Paris Protocols. Israeli goods can enter the Palestinian market without barriers, but Palestinian goods are subject to trade barriers in Israel. Number five, Israel withholds Palestinian tax returns as a negotiating tactic and for coercion, preventing the Palestinian government from stabilizing fiscal policy, building critical infrastructures, or investing in communities. Number six, Israel prevents students in Gaza from pursuing higher education. Students are not able to get study permits to access educational opportunities in the West Bank, forcing most students to drop out and repressing the academic output in Gaza. Number seven, Palestinians are pushed into reserves while living on West Bank lands. Israel illegally annexes West Bank land, forcing Palestinians into reserves and denying them the rights to which Israeli settlers are entitled. These are just a few of policies in place. There are many more. It's clear that these policies do little to stem terrorism or neutralize Hamas, as Israel would hope that we would focus on. And these policies only serve to oppress and continue Israeli occupation, not just military, but economic occupation. These very policies lead to poverty, which is the biggest catalyst for extremism. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Andy. I live in Lancaster County. I'm claiming my 30-second extension in advance. We at Millersville University Students for Justice in Palestine must unfortunately rescind our support of this specific version of the resolution. We maintain that a permanent ceasefire is necessary and the bare minimum. However, we may also maintain this specific resolution must be amended. The law of belligerent occupation, incorporated into the Geneva Convention, requires not only that an entity such as Israel protects the people they occupy, it also protects the right of the occupied people to resist. Further, this past February 2024, the International Court of Justice ordered Israel to prevent genocide and ensure aid reaches Gazans. The inclusion of the words Hamas terrorists is our first issue with this version. The application of the subjective term terrorist denies Palestinians their legal right to resist under the law of belligerent occupation. A further change to this resolution attributes the over 36,000 Palestinian deaths to hostilities between Israel and Hamas. This wrongly shifts responsibility for majority of killing away from Israel as the occupying force and blames Palestinians for their own suffering. This current resolution version also removes an entire section stating that the actions of Hamas do not justify the suffering inflicted on Palestinians by Israel. No action ever calls for collective punishment of a civilian population, which under the Geneva Convention constitutes genocide. This version also removes the phrase demanding the release of Palestinian administrative detainees. Before October 7th, the number of Palestinians held by Israel without trial or charge was already at a 20-year high at 1,310 individuals. These are hostages. By the end of March 2024, the Israeli prison service was holding 3,615 Palestinian men, women, children, also without trial or charge. Israel is the only democratic nation, in quotes, which puts children, minors, through military court. Students for Justice in Palestine, both at the national level and the Millersville chapter, is an organization that backs the Tawabit, also known as the Palestinian Red Lines. We support Palestinian liberation above all else. We will not condemn Palestinian resistance of any kind, and we are unwaveringly anti-Zionist. This resolution fails on all 3 points. It condemns Palestinian resistance fighters as terrorists while ignoring the terror that Israel has inflicted on the Palestinian people both before and after October 7th. The Israeli occupation began in 1948, not October 7th, 2023. A reminder as well, international issues are always local issues somewhere. And in a city of immigrants and refugees, this international issue is a local issue here and now. Zionism is to Judaism and Jewish values, as Christofascism is to Christianity and biblical Christian values.
3 minutes at this point.
And 30 seconds. Fighting Zionism.
At 30 seconds. I was looking at my clock. Thank you very much. Good evening.
My name is Noé Oberholzer-Hess, and I'm a Lancaster resident, also from Millersville SJP, finishing my comrade statements. Again, we reiterate, Palestinians have been and are currently being denied their rights of return and resistance. The facts of the matter are clear. If hate has no home in the welcoming city, the voices of genocide victims screaming for help on our phones right now must be centered immediately and accurately. Again, SJP supports an immediate and permanent ceasefire, but cannot, in good conscience, maintain our support for this specific resolution. Ceasefire now, end all military aid to Israel, and free Palestine.
Good evening. Tony Dastra, New Holland Avenue. I spoke at the last event. Did not expect to speak tonight, but I think it's worth speaking on because I sit somewhere in the middle on this, where I do agree that it's not this governing body's job to send forward a resolution like this. I do not think that this representative democracy we currently have is representative of the whole city, unfortunately. I do, however, believe it's the people's right to vote on something like this. I do believe this is the sort of matter, the sort of statement should be potentially simplified and taken to referendum as opposed to being decided here. Because this is the first generation of American politicians who truly have the ability to speak out on this issue without being automatically ostracized by the entirety of American politics. This is a very unique situation and a very unique time. You know, my first degree in college was in political science, and I think that there is a definite data skew when pollsters go looking for opinion. And there's an absolute disconnect between the federal level of government and the local level of government, but what they always seem to look at is the turnout and the votes. This seems to be the sort of issue that people will turn out for. And I think that people will turn out in greater numbers for an issue like this versus our choices for the president at this current moment in time. I would encourage you to put something forward that can go to referendum, whether or not you think it's something this third-class city code will do. As a home rule study commissioner, this situation has given me pause that we really should create opportunity for people to have the ability to vote on how they feel as the public, as opposed to taking a direct action. Because there are some matters that are far beyond our scope as a local government, but it's worth the public having the ability to speak on in some way, shape, or form. So I hope that you take this to a referendum vote so everyone here can make their voices known at the ballot box so that people up the ladder will hear us as well. Because I really don't understand why Mayor Sirachi will receive a copy of this resolution. She's here hearing the public right now. The person who needs to hear this is the President of the United States. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Ming. I live on Harrisburg Avenue. I'm speaking in support of a ceasefire resolution while recognizing what is included in this resolution is far from enough, and that a whole action of publishing a ceasefire resolution is not enough. I also cannot believe that we have gone so far tonight with so many speakers without hearing this part of history acknowledged. That 1948 marks the beginning of Nakba, the mass displacement of Palestinian people from their homes. Displacement, I might add, that is not voluntary, and that is an ongoing reality to this day. And what is happening in Gaza, that displacement means that the people who used to live in other parts of Gaza are now living day to day in refugee camps, not knowing whether or not they're going to be alive the next day, because every day they hear alerts of bomb threats and they have to continually seek a place of safety. Meanwhile, where in Gaza is even safe at this point? As the military continues, the IOF continues to advance its incursion into Rafah, where can the people of the Palestinian people even go? They cannot all pay $5,000 to evacuate over to Egypt. That is why we continue to call for a ceasefire. But also, this resolution will not be enough. 1948, look up Wikipedia page for the Nakba. That is the bare minimum. I have not heard anyone speaking against this resolution, even acknowledging that history goes back this far. So with your power that is just as the American local government that's supposed to represent us, acknowledge what happened, acknowledge this history. It was not a land without a people for a people without a land. The Palestinian people have the right to exist, and they have existed. And therefore, we must continue to advocate for their right to live. Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening. My name is Heather Davis, and I live in Manheim Township. I want to urge the council to please vote yes for this resolution. I work in an international public health, in the field of international public health. The nonprofit I work for was running a project in Gaza to improve its supply chain for essential medicines, which were very hard to get there because Israel blocks them. That project has ended, of course. I hope it will continue later. And I am here because I'm a mother, And the situation really isn't that complicated. People need to understand that our money is funding the weapons, is dropping the bombs. American bombs are being used to kill every single second of every day in Gaza, killing and maiming, 15,000 children dead, 20,000 missing, women and children. These are innocent civilians. Israel and the U.S. have so much power. We must call for a ceasefire. A multilateral ceasefire means all fire stops. To call for that is the only ethical thing you can do. No American should ever stand for our money paying for 2,000-ton bombs that obliterate entire families. It is wrong, and Lancaster City needs to say it's wrong and draw attention to the complicity of our government in the slaughter of these people. Netanyahu has said over and over again he will not recognize a two-state solution. That's a little problem, isn't it? Everyone deserves a right to live freely. Ceasefire now. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ashley Novalis. I'm a resident of Lancaster City. I acknowledge that Lancaster City Council has heard and responded to community pressure to vote for a ceasefire resolution, but this resolution being voted on today is antithetical to the movement for Palestinian liberation and does not center Palestinians. The resolution that was originally presented to City Council was the work of many different voices in our community, including Palestinian and Jewish community members, and I am disappointed to see that the resolution being voted on is not representative of our collective work. After months of edits and making the resolution more palatable, it leaves out key points that were important to our Palestinian neighbors who have family in Gaza, so I must say them here and acknowledge the approximately 9,000 Palestinians that are held captive by Israel, and that the actions of Hamas on October 7th do not justify the brutal genocide that Israel is currently carrying out. The current resolution is also sprinkled with language that demonizes Palestinians and panders to Zionist narratives, not unlike the dehumanizing language and misinformation I've heard repeated this evening. I would remind Council that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, that there have been Jewish folks for the liberation of Palestine since before the creation of the State of Israel. I would remind Council that this is a local issue as our tax dollars are funding this genocide. Our state police officers have a history of training with the IOF, and we have Lancaster residents who are refugees from Gaza due to the violence of Israel. I would remind Council of story after story we have brought to you for weeks describing the colonial violence and destruction we are watching on our screens and funding with our dollars, that Gaza is starving. They are being starved. While Biden and politicians who our elected leaders continue to campaign for continue to send billions of dollars of weapons to Israel. Israel has said multiple times that they have no intentions of accepting a ceasefire deal, no matter how much our politicians try to gaslight us into thinking so. We should have a ceasefire resolution. We should have had one months ago. The people of Lancaster will continue to fight for the liberation of Palestine, and the city of Lancaster must decide if it will be on the side of liberation. Palestine will be free. We will see a free Palestine within our lifetime. To quote Palestinian poet Mossab Abu Taha, "Don't ever be surprised to see a rose shoulder up among the ruins of the house. This is how we survived. Free Palestine."
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Mike O'Brien. I live on Ruby Street. Thanks for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for all of you for your service to our community. You have to be really devoid of empathy to not consider the human tragedy that Hamas created on October 7th. Many, many people are suffering. It's a horrible situation. I don't support this resolution for several reasons. Number one, it only makes a passing reference to hostages that are being used as human bargaining chips by Hamas. 262 days and counting. 8 of those hostages are U.S. citizens. This doesn't recognize the right of Israel to exist as a nation and defend itself from aggression. Number 3, this calls on the end of military aid to Israel without any requirement to disarm Hamas or call on other governments to stop funding Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization, and their October 7th attack was an act of war. They don't deserve the ability to negotiate the terms of their surrender via a ceasefire. The words you are seeking is unconditional surrender. To support acts of terror by rewarding this act of aggression with a negotiated settlement will only incite further violence from other organizations seeking to negotiate a political settlement through violence. Number 5, City Council is not the venue for global political resolutions that will inflame community tension while not accomplishing any real peaceful solution in a conflict thousands of miles away. Reasonable people will have passionate and differing opinions. Will the next resolution that council is being asked to support is the right of resistance for Puerto Rican independence? Puerto Rico was invaded in 1898 and has been living under colonial rule since then. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. My name is Brett Chalupa. I live in Manor Township, and I was a resident of Lancaster City for 3 years. We have heard from many different perspectives, some of which contain debunked propaganda about October 7th, and others with incorrect statements about who does and does not agree to the proposed resolutions in the international stage. We've heard from others who believe that there shouldn't be a ceasefire, that the genocide of the Palestinians in Gaza is justified. We heard a man calling Palestinians animals, which is common Islamophobic rhetoric. Let us remember what a member of the Israeli parliament said. It is better to burn down buildings than to have Israeli soldiers harmed. There are no innocents in Gaza. A resident said, let's remember October 6th when there was no war. To which I'd say, let us remember that there has been brutal occupation by Israel for decades. Let us remember what happened during the Nakba, when thousands of Palestinians were forced from their home in decades of settler colonialism. Before October 7th, Gaza was described as the world's largest open-air prison by those who visited. Before the genocide, the population was already at risk for famine, only exacerbated by Israel's brutal tactics of starving innocent civilians and committing countless war crimes. We must remember that we, as United States citizens, are obligated to certain things. One of those is that our labor is funding this genocide. Every hour we work, that money goes to the government. The government is using that money to fund this genocide. That is unacceptable. We cannot have our labor funding bombs that get dropped on innocent civilians, many of whom are women and children. We must remember who are the oppressed and who the oppressors are. We must think of the over 1 million civilians who live in an area 1/8 the size of Lancaster County. We must call for and be a voice for peace. The claim that this resolution will not impact what is happening on the international stage is incorrect. You will stand proudly among few other leaders who have conscience, who will call for a ceasefire. And this is so important. As our local leaders, as our local voices, I urge you to vote yes on this resolution. This is democracy in action. These resolutions have meaning, have impact, and we thank you very much for considering it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Julian Harnish. I am from Woodward Street in the southeast part of Lancaster. One thing that has become clear to me tonight is that if this resolution is passed, there will be people from both sides who will be offended. And I have been surprised that I have resonated with points made from both sides. However, I would point out that I think this resolution as is centrist enough, is neutral enough that it should be passed. And it is for these reasons. For one, it starts out by recognizing Hamas terrorist actions and follows that by pointing out Israeli casualties that have ensued by Israeli towards Palestinian people. At the heart of the proposal is a multilateral ceasefire request, which is a very bipartisan action. And one of the final resolution pieces is, be it further resolved that City Council of the City of Lancaster affirms its commitment to combat anti-Palestinian discrimination, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia in all its forms, and to ensure the dignity, safety, and thriving of all its residents. So for those reasons, I hope that you will pass this resolution.
Thank you. Yes, sir. You have been up previously.
No, I have not.
You have. I'm so sorry.
I've just been
2 hours.
been sitting here the whole time, so you've seen me.
I like face soup. Okay. Please continue. Good evening.
Most people don't. Okay. Thank you. My name is Hal Coplin. I am a Manheim Township resident, Koplin. I'm a full supporter of Israel, but I have been extremely distressed by the lack of food and medical supplies getting into Gaza. As was said earlier tonight, you don't have to agree with every decision, or you can disagree with some decisions by leaders of a country and still support the country. I think that it's shameful that that has not happened. I know why. I understand somewhat more now why it has not happened, because of the history of the region. But as you've heard tonight, everyone is very passionate on both sides. I would want to point out that there have been thousands of years of anti-Semitism, and it has come in camouflage in all various forms. Right now, one of the most common forms of anti-Semitism is to say, I'm anti-Zionist, not anti-Semitic. But in most cases, you're hard-pressed to see the difference based on actions. There have been a lot of unsubstantiated statements made tonight, references to the UN, which has been anti-Israel, except for U.S. vetoes for most of its history. So Israel was attacked after it was created a state in 48, in 55, 67, and 73, and now in 2023, and has defended itself all those occasions. And it was very proud for the first 20 years of existence at how many Israeli Arabs were in the country and taken care of and prosperous. And ever since the 67 war and then the occupation defensively of the West Bank to protect Israel from constant attacks, it has gone down, because it's impossible to be a benevolent occupier, and there is no clear solution. There is only really one thing clear here tonight, based on the passions of all sides and eloquent statements, true or not, from all sides, is that Lancaster City Council should stay out of this business. You should not be voting to support this, because it accomplishes nothing other than divisiveness and splitting people. It won't accomplish any change anywhere, and it will just embitter people. And I urge you to withdraw this or vote it down.
Good evening.
Good evening. Patrick Felrath, Hebrank Street. I'm sure the City Council probably remembers my stance on the issue. What you may not be aware of is that this issue has already divided your city and has led to the harassment of people who are exercising their First Amendment right, largely black and brown individuals who are being harassed by certain individuals who are in this room right now. And you have done nothing to protect them. A vote against this resolution is a vote in favor of genocide. It is a vote in favor of white supremacy, and it is a vote against the safety of the people of the city. Thank you.
Ms. Baumgartner, I appreciate your patience. I know that you're reading into the record additional statement. If you could begin with their name and speak on behalf of them, please do.
Good evening. My name is Jenny Schulderbrandt,
and I live on West James Street. And I'm sorry that I won't be able to speak in person, but I had to leave town for a family emergency. As a resident of this city, I appreciate living in a place that welcomes refugees, but I don't understand what this ceasefire resolution does to help signal that it is a welcoming place for all of us. In fact, it just seems like virtue signaling, creating friction and frustration and further polarization between two communities that desperately need to build bridges. Hamas, the terrorist extremist regime that has been in power in Gaza since 2006, started this war and could easily end it if they would agree to two things. One, release the hostages. Two, disarm. The power to end the war and prevent more death is in Hamas's hands, yet they have rejected 17 ceasefire agreements. Rather than spending time on this resolution, it would be much more useful and productive to spend time and energy partnering with one of the several organizations that are promoting peace and relationships between civilians of both Israel and Palestine. I am disappointed by Lancaster Stands Up's lack of vision and desire for real progress, which as a grassroots organization should be building bridges between people on the ground rather than virtue signaling with empty, meaningless words. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. It's been a long night. Thank you for trying to give a resolution for the Palestine-Israel conflict.
Sir, if you could begin with your name and block of residence for the meeting record. Thank you.
My name is Amar, Lancaster resident. I've heard a good amount of one-sided comments tonight that show that there are some that do not care about Palestinian civilians, and that is a part of the problem. I care about Jews, Christians, Muslims, and human beings as a whole. This is a type of care of what makes us peaceful, noble, and or religious. There are Palestinians, Jews, Christians, and kind people who protest and advocate for the Palestinian people. If people do not mention or even acknowledge that about 40,000 innocent civilians lost their lives or are under the rubble, then how can they say they know the difference between right and wrong? What if your child, your aunt, your cousin was there? For those that do not have a close person to them over there in Gaza, I cannot give you this feeling. As people die in Gaza every day, why can't we say that this is not ethnic cleansing in the motion? They're not coming back. Their lives are gone forever. We'll never get to see them again. The Palestinian people paid the price for a militant group that they had nothing to do with. There is no past for that. I care about what happened. I care about what happened in the Israeli territories and the Palestinian territories. Implement fair and equal rules, I would say. However, this is not normal and it shouldn't be. I'm not going to go too deep into that. There is an illegal occupation imposed by the Israeli government. Dismantle the occupation and hold together a pact where all peoples win, not selective ones, because all lives matter. Free people from such a negative thinking and care for everyone. We have the same blood. End the siege. No to our tax dollars being paid for this bloodshed. I want to end with permanent ceasefire. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Taylor Enterline. I'm from Manheim Borough, but I've done a lot of work in the city since I was in high school. We hear a lot about October 7th. October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, almost July. We are going on 10 months. This is an ethnic cleansing and it is a genocide. To think that this does not have an effect on our local level is outlandish. Our tax dollars are funding this genocide. Our hard-earned money is funding this genocide. There are no hospitals, there are no schools. Children are being massacred. We've heard from all different sides, but the thing is, this is a genocide that is happening. People's lives are being ruined. There are no mosques, there's no livelihood, there is forced famine, there's starvation. blocked humanitarian aid from settlers. And if we're going to talk about Hamas being in Gaza, let's talk about the West Bank. Let's talk about the West Bank where people are being targeted in the streets, in their homes. Israel is a settler colonial apartheid state, and we need to pass this resolution. So free Palestine till it's backwards. Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Ann Torres. I live in Lidditz. Today, I have no interest in attempting to appeal to anyone's humanity, but rather your self-preservation. Because I know everyone sees the writing on the wall. Israel is losing. Arrest warrants by the ICC are being issued. War cabinet disbanded. On May 18th, former Deputy Director of the Mossad, Ram Ben Barak, said, quote, "The war in Gaza is aimless. We are clearly losing it. We are forced to return to fighting in the same areas, losing more soldiers, losing on the international stage, damaging relations with the United States and causing the economy to collapse. Show me one thing that we have succeeded in," unquote. Just like every other apartheid regime in history, Israel's occupation of Palestine has finally become far too costly. When Israel falls as a consequence to its violence, you do not have to fall with it. Choose to support a permanent ceasefire, but do not take too long to decide, because just like Israel's, your time is running out. Be on the right side of history. Ceasefire now.
We have come to the end of the line for comments. Unless there's anyone that needs to make a comment that has not already, I will be closing public comments at this time. Thank you, everybody who has come out tonight to speak on this issue. Without any further comments from council, I'll hear any over here, any over here.
I think I'd like to make a few comments, Council President.
Councilor Hirsch.
I just want to thank everybody for coming, who's come to our meetings, who sent us emails. It's vital to democracy to have a forum where citizens can voice their concern. I think it's pretty clear to everyone in this room that we're not going to create peace with this resolution. The resolution's not going to be perfect. It's never going to perfectly encapsulate all of the information, much of which we receive, as the rabbi previously stated, is conflicting often. I read directly contradicting news reports on a near daily basis about this conflict, from reliable sources too. Does that mean we shouldn't converse about it and hold this forum and give people this opportunity? I'm a firm believer, like Rabbi Paskoff, that peace is only going to come when the people in this room do the work. It will take some of us getting to know one another in this room. People that you maybe don't agree with. And I'd like everyone to take a look around. It will take real work to take us helping one another, attending to one another's needs. And I want to speak to those who say this isn't a matter that City Council should take up. I've, again, like I said, listened to now hundreds of perspectives on this. I know for myself, I was born and raised in Lancaster, and thus I have a very United States-centric view of the world. Where I sit in the world is different than where other people do. So I try to see past that because I know the limitations of my worldview. And again, we've heard hundreds of worldviews on this. For me, I'm the grandson of two conscientious objectors who, due to their Anabaptist and Mennonite rooted beliefs, believe that nonviolence is a way of life. And I believe that doing that work that I aforementioned is what it means to have nonviolence as a way of life. Some of you have shared that Anabaptist heritage, and you've spoken about it at City Council. And I want to say that I don't agree with everything that's been said here on this particular subject. But I feel that the call is for a cessation of hostilities in Gaza and for a different means of resolving this conflict in the region over the long term. I believe that's consistent with Lancaster values. President Biden has put a ceasefire deal on the table. to seek long-term resolution in the region and over this conflict. The UN Security Council endorsed that ceasefire, and it's time for the sides to accept it. Ceasefire now.
Mr. Harris, the vote.
Yes, Madam President. Mr. Miller. Aye. Mr. Roy.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Nay.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
President Baker.
Aye. I respect that some of you may have only been here for this item, so we'll just take a very brief pause because we do have a full agenda. If anyone would like to take a step out, this would be the time to do it. And then we'll continue on with the rest of our agenda.
Thank you.
And I will say that we do have a full agenda, so I would ask that, I appreciate all of you very much for being here and participating, but if you are leaving, if you could go ahead and step out at this time. All right, Council, we will come back to order. We're going to continue on with our agenda this evening. The next item on our agenda is I'm scrolling, pardon me. The first public comment period reserved for residents who have contacted the city clerk prior to the meeting to request the opportunity to address city council, and the duration of comments is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Mr. Harris, do we have a pre-registered comment tonight?
We do. We have Dean Evans.
Mr. Evans. Good evening and thank you for being here.
Good evening. My name is Dean Evans, 517 St. Joseph Street, Lancaster City. Good evening, Mayor, council members. My appearance here tonight is bittersweet for me. For the past 22 years, through 3 mayors and 6 administrations, I have proudly served on the Lancaster City Traffic Commission. But sadly, I am here tonight to announce my resignation from the board. As Traffic Commission is a city board that requires its citizen representatives to be city residents, after 35 years of living and loving the city, this Friday will be my last day as a city resident. When I was appointed to the Traffic Commission, I did so with the intention of ensuring that pedestrians and handicapped had safe means of crossing and navigating our city streets, and I believe I can say that that goal has been a success. But much work lays ahead with Vision Zero. While the appointment of a citizen representative to the Traffic Commission Board is at the discretion of the mayor and approval of council, I hope that my long tenure on the board would grant me the opportunity to at least recommend my replacement. My friend, city resident, and Commonweal CEO Adriana Atenzio has long been a frequent attendee of Traffic Commission meetings. She is a tireless advocate for the same residents I advocated for, but with the added demographic of bicyclists, a target group of Vision Zero. I ask that she be considered as a worthy replacement for me. With that said, I am immensely grateful for the City of Lancaster allowing me to serve these many years on Traffic Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Evans, for your service.
If I may, Council President, very briefly.
Absolutely.
I just want to say thank you. There are so many, as Council knows, so many boards, commissions, and authorities, and we have been blessed to have such long-standing service by volunteers such as yourself. And Traffic Commission, you have brought an incredible wealth of information. I know as a new mayor, I did not know my way around Traffic Commission. You have generously shared your knowledge with other members, including new city council members who have joined Traffic Commission. And I would just hate for tonight to end and you to leave the city on Friday without publicly acknowledging your many hours of service to the city and your contributions to the progress that we have made in achieving our Vision Zero goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Our next item on the agenda is reports requested by council. I don't believe there is any of those this evening. Is that right, Mr. Harris?
There is none.
Great. Interim reports of committees of council are next. There appear to be none of those, if that's correct. Then we will move into our legislative agenda for this evening. The first items are Heritage Conservation District items. And I believe, Councilor Craig, you said you'd like to take those two together. Is that right?
Yes, Council President.
Thank you. Mr. Harris.
Yes, Madam President. Considering the following applications and recommendations from the Historical Commission for improvements to properties within the Heritage Conservation District. The first is Brentwood Builders, owners of 303 West King Street. They propose construction of a new 3 1/2-story residential apartment building on an open parcel. And second is East Madison Friends LLC, owners of 218 East Madison Street, and they propose construction of a new second story on an existing one-story warehouse building. And both of those applications were recommended for approval by the Historical Commission.
I'll motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Craig, do you have anything additional to add to those items besides the description and that they were recommended for approval?
I do not.
Thank you. Are the applicants here for any of those items that wish to speak? Okay. Thank you very much. Any council comments on the motion? From the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Mann.
Aye.
Mr. Roy.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
And President Bacon.
Aye. Next item on our agenda is ordinances for final passage. We begin with Administration Bill Number 6, 2024. Mr. Harris.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, amending the Code of the City of Lancaster, Section 64.2 and 64.20, both entitled Definitions. The Code of the City of Lancaster, Section 64.7 and 64.27, both entitled Service Increments, and the Code of the City of Lancaster, Section 64.23, entitled Active Firefighter Contributions, Group Life Insurance, to modify the service increments under the Policeman's Relief Fund and the Firefighters Relief Fund so as to assure the ordinances of the City of Lancaster are consistent with the collective bargaining agreements by and between the City of Lancaster and the Lancaster City Police Officer Association and the Lancaster City Professional Firefighters Association 319, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing that the ordinance shall take effect in accordance with Pennsylvania law.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. This came through our Finance Committee. Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Council President. I don't have much to add beyond the title of the ordinance, just that the bill corrects inconsistencies between the pension ordinance and the city's collective bargaining agreements, and this bill will correct that.
Great. Thank you very much. Any additional council comments on the bill? From the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Mann.
Aye.
Mr. Roy.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
And President Bacon.
Aye. The next item is Administration Bill Number 7, 2024. Mr. Harris.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lancaster approving an intermunicipal agreement by and between Manheim Township and the City of Lancaster to adopt and approve the Lancaster Train Station Small Area Plan as the official plan to be used as a guide to development around the Lancaster Amtrak station, including but not limited to considering necessary amendments to the respective zoning ordinances to be consistent with the plan, encouraging planning staff of the township and the city to collaborate and coordinate on development projects in the area around the Lancaster Amtrak station, and to promote and support the development of this area in a manner that is consistent with the plan, and authorizing the appropriate officials of the city to enter into and perform tasks associated with the intermunicipal agreement.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This is coming up through Community Planning. Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council President.
As presented by Director Dowd, this bill is authorizes the city officials to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with Manheim Township to adopt the train station small area plan, which was completed last August. Adoption was delayed while the city completed the comprehensive plan, as the two plans complement each other.
Thank you very much, Councilor Craig. This is the intermunicipal agreement needed for such a plan. I'll also note that the actual plan itself is later on in the agenda. Any additional council comments from the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Madden.
Aye.
Mr. Roy.
Aye.
Mr. Please.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch. And President Bacon.
Aye. All right, our next item on the agenda is ordinances for first reading. We begin with Bill number 8, 2024. Mr. Harris.
An ordinance authorizing the incurrence of non-electoral debt of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, by the issuance of principal amount general obligation bonds, series of 2024, issued for the purpose of providing funds for the design, planning, and construction of additions, improvements, and extraordinary repairs with respect to water fund capital projects, together with the acquisition of related machinery and equipment and necessary real estate rights and interests, providing funds to acquire a pumping station for the city's water system, including the acquisition of land to expand the water reservoir and other capital projects as determined by the city, to pay capitalized interest on the 2024 bonds, and to pay the costs of issuance of the series of 2024 bonds, determining to sell the series 2024 bonds at a private sale by invitation, approving the form of the series of 2024 bonds, fixing the number, date, interest, and maturities of the 2024 bonds, making a covenant for the payment of the debt service on the 2024 bonds, pledging the full faith, credit, and taxing power of this city in support of such bonds, providing for the filing of required documents, providing for the appointment of a sinking fund depository for the 2024 bonds, and authorizing execution, sale, and delivery thereof, and other necessary action.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. I know these titles seem to be very lengthy this evening. Councilor Arroyo, I know this is related to the next item as well.
Yes, Council President. I actually take the time to speak on both Bill number 8 and Bill number 9. As you may recall, both of these bills were regarding the debt financing. I mentioned that both of these ordinances will remain on the agenda for this evening, but only one will eventually be passed, depending on the decision to either choose bond financing or a bank note. If we do choose to go with the bond financing, we are looking potentially for an August 13th final vote on this ordinance, since that will take a little bit more time. If we decide to go with a bank note, we'll actually see this come on our agenda on July 9th. But as of tonight, for the first reading, both of these bills will remain on the agenda.
Thank you very much, Councilor Arroyo, and you answered my question about timelines. Any additional council comments on the first bill, Bill 8? Councilor.
Just a question, if either Director Campbell or the mayor could just elaborate on which would be, which version, whether the bond, the debt refinancing, or the bank note, which would be better for the city financially?
Good evening.
Good evening. So we are still determining that. As of now, it looks like bond rates are better than bank notes can commit to, but that's why we're introducing both of them tonight, just to reserve the right to go with the bank note if that turns out to be better. At this point, it's probably going to be the bond, the direction of the bond.
Thank you. And this was mentioned in the previous meeting where this was discussed, but what is the total amount of ARPA dollars that would be returned?
Yeah, so the total amount of ARPA dollars returning is about $3.4 million.
Thank you, and that concludes my questions.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed. Any additional questions or comments from council? From the public? All right, this is the first reading. I'm reminding myself that, so we're not calling a vote at this time. We will then move to the first reading of Administration Bill Number 9, 2024. Mr. Harris.
An ordinance authorizing the occurrence of non-electoral debt of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, by issuance of principal amount of general obligation note, Series A of 2024, the Series A note, and principal amount of general obligation note, Series B of 2024, the Series B note, together with the Series A note and the notes. The Series A note is being issued for the purpose of providing funds for the design, planning, and construction of additions, improvements, and extraordinary repairs with respect to water fund capital projects, together with the acquisition of related machinery and equipment and necessary real estate rights and interests, including the acquisition of land, to expand the water reservoir and all related costs and expenses and other capital projects as determined by the city, to pay capitalized interest on the Series A note, and to pay the cost of issuance of the Series A note. The Series B note is being issued for the purpose of providing funds to acquire a pumping station for the city's water system and to pay the cost of issuance of the Series B note, determining to sell the Series A note and the Series B note at a private sale by invitation, approving the form of the Series A note and the Series B note, fixing the date, interest, and maturity of the Series A note and the Series B note, making a covenant for the payment of the debt service on the Series A note and the Series B note, pledging the full faith, credit, and taxing power of this city in support of each note, providing for the filing of required documents, providing for the appointment of a sinking fund depository for each note, and authorizing execution, sale, and delivery thereof, and other necessary action.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Somehow longer than the first one, that title. Councilor Arroyo, anything else to add? I know you had addressed this option.
Yep, nothing to add, Council
Great,
President.
thank you very much. Director Campbell, anything else that we need to know? Thank you. Any council comments from the public? All right, we will look forward to one of these two bills advancing in an upcoming meeting. Thank you very much. I'm playing along correctly at home. We're now on to resolutions, number D, letter D on our agenda. We'll start with resolution number 53, 2024. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster appointing special counsel for the City of Lancaster.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Council President. This resolution actually relates to the previous bills that were read, number 8 and 9, regarding the debt refinancing. This specific resolution authorizes appointment of special counsel for the financing. Typically, the city appoints special counsel whenever additional financing is sought, and this resolution would appoint Rhonda F. Lord with Saxon and Stump as special counsel for the borrowing.
Thank you very much. Any additional council comments? Director Campbell, if you have anything to add. Okay, thank you. And comments from the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Med.
Aye.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
And President Baker.
Aye. We'll now move to resolution number 55, 2024. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster adopting the Lancaster Train Station Small Area Plan to guide future land use, land development, and transportation planning in the vicinity around the Lancaster Train Station, which includes portions of Manheim Township and the City of Lancaster, in order to support the long-term success of the train station and surrounding neighborhood as a regional asset.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Craig.
So this resolution is the adoption of what we previously did, we went over and discussed in Bill number 7 that we just voted on a few minutes ago.
Thank you very much. I'll just remind council that we received a presentation as it related to this plan when we introduced the intermunicipal agreement bill in the last meeting. Are there any additional council comments? Any from the public? Mr. Dastra.
Tony Dastra, New Holland Avenue. I just want to say that I'm really glad that this is coming forward. This is a huge community resource, economic resource, and also a good exemplar of how we're able to work alongside other municipalities, and I just wanted to say that for the record. Thank you. Oh, and also the fact that Mr. Smith is an amazing city planner, and we're going to be missing him on Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Dastra. We'll embarrass Mr. Smith at a later time, later date, perhaps. We'll see. Okay, great. Thank you for that. Any additional comments from the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Madden. Aye. Mr. Roy. Aye. Mr. Please.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
And President Baker.
Aye. Thank you. All right, we've now come to the conclusion of our legislative agenda. We're now at our second public comment period. It's open for comments about items that were not previously on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Please begin with your name and block of residence for the meeting record. Mr. Smith, good evening.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor. Douglas Smith, Chief Planner of the City of Lancaster. Some of you already know this, but this Friday will be my last day serving with the City of Lancaster. I submitted my resignation last week after accepting a new position with the U.S. Green Building Council to be their Director of Land Use and Location. Primarily, I want to say how much I've appreciated working with all of you in this important position. And I've grown from intern to Chief Planner over the last 10 years of service here. And I've seen Councilor Sirachi become Mayor Sirachi, and also friend. And your commitment as a whole to the betterment of the community is evident, and I'm sincerely grateful for that. It's been a true pleasure. And I hope that this council can help shepherd, among many things, the implementation of the comprehensive plan, which the residents of the city of this city brought forward to you, with my guidance and yours. And since I'll be working remotely from Lancaster City, I'll still be a resident, and I'm still relying on all of you to continue the good work. But I know that we're in very good hands. And lastly, I just want to say that I too am a member of the Traffic Commission and will no longer be serving as of Friday. So that makes 2 members that you're losing. So with that, I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yes. I'll just say that I am incredibly proud of the work that you've done, that you should be proud of the comprehensive plan. I don't think we talk enough about how monumental that was to complete and get across the finish line, and you will be missed. But also congratulations on your new position. Thank you. Mayor Sirachi, did you have something now, or did you want to?
I'll save that for my report.
That sounds good. Okay. That's the next thing. Are there any other public comments this evening? Mr. Dastra?
Yeah, now that the room is empty, I do have more to say. Tony Dastra, New Holland Avenue. I just want to thank you, Councilor Hirsch, for your comments, because it's different being on this side versus that side, and how I address the logic of a situation, and I thought all of your comments were great. So thank you for what you did, because, you know, in American politics, I think it was Abraham Lincoln, something to the effect of you can make everybody happy some of the time, some people happy all the time, but you can't make everybody happy all the time. And this was one of those situations. So regardless of everything that happened here, I do want to say that I appreciate all the work that y'all collectively did on the issue, and furthermore, you specifically for having such robust comments prior to the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Dastra. Any additional public comments this evening? Hearing none, we will move to the next item on the agenda, report of the mayor. Mayor Sirachi.
Very briefly and unprepared, but just to thank Douglas. It's been a joy to work with you, and I wish you very well.
Thank you very much. The next item is the report of President of Council. Besides lauding unlimited praise on Douglas Smith, I don't have any planned report this evening, so we'll move to council comments. Any council comments tonight?
Council President,
Councilor
just briefly, I just wanted to pass some kind words from the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Commissioners. They were here in Lancaster this past weekend for their annual meeting, and they wanted to share the praise of their experience here in Lancaster, and wanted me to pass off along to the rest of the council how much they enjoyed their time in Lancaster City.
Thank you for that. Further council comments?
If I may, Council
Councilor
President.
Roy?
Just say thank you to Mr. Smith for his service, many years of service to the city. One of the things I really appreciate about the folks that are in City Hall is the team that has come together to move the city forward, and I think of you as one of those folks as well. So really appreciate all your efforts, and luckily you're still a resident, so I'm sure we'll see you around. Thank you.
Any other council comments? Councilor Craig?
Douglas, I'll miss you. Thank you very much for teaching me about a sewer plan module. I think I got a good handle on that now. And I think I can do this, but I'll probably still need a little guidance. But good luck to you.
Thank you, Councilor Craig. Any others? Okay, hearing none, having reached the conclusion of our agenda, I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.